how's it going? My name is Freeze, aka Justin Fostar, and this is the Laughing Matters podcast with my co-host Elise.
Hi guys. So today we're going to be talking mainly with Justin about his journey with anxiety, journey through life, literally everything about Justin. You have like an insane story that I feel like it's good to finally put on a camera.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, you definitely do. So yeah, I really want to get into it. You've been in entertainment now for how long? Like how many years has it been?
I got into the game about 1995, 1996.
I was 4.
Yeah, she's going to point that out a lot. That I'm
So many
I'm
times.
old,
No, deadass.
which is fine. But yeah, I've been doing radio for over 28 years and been in some form of the entertainment industry for a total of about 30 years.
Right. And I remember you from 103.5, of course, that being hip hop, R&B, at that time.
Yeah.
So the thing about being in hip hop that's notable is that hip hop doesn't center around mental health.
Right.
So coming into hip hop spaces, coming into being around, a completely different culture as a white man in the industry, do you feel like that had an effect on what started this like anxiety within you? Or
Yeah, I think part of, we've talked, the way we met was interesting because you are actually the wife to a friend of mine, and we've had similar discussions because of things that we've posted that ran along the lines of mental health.
Right.
And one of the things that I have done through sobriety is realize that anxiety was a huge built-in factor in my life early on, and then essentially what I became good at was useful in the entertainment industry.
Right.
So I was then rewarded for my coping mechanisms, whether it's humor or whatever, but the core factor was an underlying battle with anxiety that was unidentified my entire life until probably, I'd say, 10 years ago I started thinking about it.
Yeah.
5 years got serious about it.
Yeah. Well, and a lot has happened in that time,
Yes.
that condensed time. Yeah.
Yes. So, that's been the journey so far, but the last 5 years have been the most intense awareness, new practices, and all of that.
Yeah. Well, walk me through because when I think about it, I don't know what it was like to being an adult or a young adult in the 90s,
Yeah.
where there's no talk of mental health. There's none of that.
Yeah.
Like that's just not a thing. So like for you, what was it like being in these spaces? And like, of course, at the time you didn't know,
Right.
but you're having your experiences. You're
Right.
drinking. You're smoking.
Right.
What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, at 18 or 19, I had never smoked weed. I had never drank alcohol. I had never done any of those things.
You were straight edge.
I was straight edge, and I was very proud of that. Like, I remember me and my best friend at the time were just totally thought people who drank and smoked were losers.
Yeah.
The guys that went to were on the football team and went to the frat parties were losers, and we took this huge stance of pride in sobriety.
Hell yeah.
And then I got into radio, and really that's really kind of what happened is my world went from high school theater, football, basketball crowds to being in rooms with celebrities and being in rooms with artists and musicians and the creative space at a high level, to where I found myself as a white boy, the only white boy in the room.
Right.
And the blunts getting passed around. And so that was my first kind of delve into, all right, well, let me try this. And really what I realized over time was that moment was when I was dealing with my anxiety and identifying my anxiety for just ignoring it and staying medicated.
Yeah.
And that was at 18, 19 years old that I started making those decisions. And it took me 20-something years of living that life before the repercussions of that lifestyle and just the chaos inside made me have to realize and unpack my whys,
Hell
my
shit, yeah.
reasons. So
Yeah, which is hard. I feel like it's harder for men. It's just harder for men because you guys don't. It's not nurtured for you guys. That I feel the same as it is for women. Like women kind of get a pass for being emotional, whereas like men, you're just not supposed to. You're not supposed to feel shit.
Right.
Like you're not supposed to feel a thing, and it's also like told to you by everybody. And then when you're surrounded by a whole bunch of people that, especially other men, and especially in the entertainment industry, we don't talk about that shit.
And in the 90s, it was even worse.
Right. Yeah.
In the 90s, it was, I don't want to say worse, but it was definitely Gully Gangster and Gator.
Period.
Was,
Yeah.
it was the songs that were getting the most play and the most the culture was much more NWA and Wu-Tang than it was
We're not
Drake.
talking about anxiety there.
Yeah,
No, we're not.
Than it was Drake and Kehlani. I love both those artists. Don't get it twisted, but the culture was much more different.
Yeah.
And as a white boy walking into those spaces, there was a lot of anxiety already with all of that. To also compound the fact that I was suffering from anxiety from a childhood that I wasn't even aware of, that put me in a whole headspace where I was just primed to drink and smoke and do whatever I could to feel normal in those spaces.
Yeah, it's like that part of it is like you don't realize that you're a statistic because you've never really had to think of yourself as a statistic. And when you're not thinking about like, oh, because I've had these experiences and they predisposed me for that, like you're not thinking about that.
Right. Right.
You're not thinking about it until it happens.
Right.
Or you have the time. And now I know you've been to prison.
Not prison, jail.
Jail. There you go.
Much different.
No. Let's talk about it. So you've been to jail. Yes. How long was your time in jail? And did you have any idea that was something that you were going through then, or was it just like I'm here, I'm about to get out, and then I'm about to be on my shit? Like
no. Like I went to jail in 2010, and I was in for 3 months, serving on a 4-month sentence. Was very lucky with that sentence too. Could have been a lot more. Could have been a lot worse. But essentially, that was the first time I'd ever been in trouble. And as soon as it happened, as soon as I was in trouble, as soon as I was in jail, I knew I was never coming back to this place.
Which is good.
And it was very much a wake up for me because I was at the point where I went to jail. I was still partying. I was still out acting reckless.
How old were you?
I was old as hell. Okay. I was 35 when I got arrested. But it was the first and only time I've ever been arrested.
Listen, that's young. That's young today.
Well,
35 is the new 25.
Okay, I'll let you say it.
So
I'll let you say it.
Here we are.
But yeah, so that was really the first time that I had to sit down and think. And, I really got into a headspace of why? Why did this happen? Why me? And, a lot of people will go through a situation like that and they'll think, why me? Why me? And for me, there was this moment, I remember being in jail and having this moment of why me? It's not a victim thing. It's a, why is this happening?
Yeah.
What's the purpose? And that switch in my mindset really put me on a track when I got out of jail, to do it the right way and to work on myself and identify what got me in that position in the first place. And that's when I started, like you asked, that's when I started unpacking when I became aware of like what my triggers were and why that was happening was anxiety.
Right.
Why did I have anxiety? I had anxiety because, as a young child, I had abandonment issues with my father. So I never knew.
Oof, we're getting into that, yeah.
Yeah, I never knew how to balance those feelings of being abandoned as a child. Were never dealt with. Right. So that became a constant sense of anxiety, whether it was with new people, new friends. I moved a lot, so I had to make new friends, finding myself in those spaces where using my charm and my humor got me in the room and got everybody in the room comfortable with me.
Because that's how you coped,
right,
with the abandonment and all of that.
Right, but it also kept everybody away.
Well, of course, it's a form of avoidance.
Right, so it served a purpose, but it didn't really allow anybody to help me learn and unpack and develop meaningful relationships and things like that. So yeah, all that happened in 2010, and that's where I really kind of got to the space of looking inward. But it still took me another 14 years to get sober and really identify that it was anxiety and it was
a problem.
Mental health. It was
a
mental health issue, and that started happening about 2020 because I was hospitalized in 2020.
Yeah.
I moved to Los Angeles and started working with a great job with Nick Cannon in Los Angeles. And it was kind of the thing where I left radio, and radio was dying. I was done with it. I didn't think it was going to flourish anymore. And a friend of mine called and said, "Hey, we got this job. We want you to, put your hat in, apply, interview." And I did, and I got the job. And
It's crazy.
Yeah, it was a blessing.
But think about that, like coming from doing radio, being in entertainment, being around a whole bunch of different people, and then also because the entertainment world is so chaotic as far as schedules, as far as contracts, as far as the duration of what you're going to be doing, and then at any given point it could shut off. You already have that anxiety, but then like it's like, oh, one day someone's like, yeah, I want you to do this, and you're going to play this vital part, and you're going to be working with like, big people that had to have been one super affirming, but also like shit.
Yeah. That's an interesting, dichotomy of my life, is that while not dealing with the anxiety, more anxiety prone situations.
It's like good, okay, like the good anxiety and the not good anxiety. Because for us, people that deal with anxiety is just anxiety.
Right.
But someone eventually comes in and says, yes, but this is good anxiety.
Right.
And then this is bad anxiety.
Right.
If you're feeling this way, that's a good thing. That's like general excitement. We're like, no, but I'm scared though. I feel fear in my body.
And the only time I felt this has been associated with fear.
Right.
So it's completely, it's the same emotion, same message, same reaction, same fear.
Yes.
And so, getting that call with Nick was amazing. And I went to Los Angeles and started working with Nick. And about 7 months into that job, I had an aneurysm. And the aneurysm is essentially what caused me to be sober and sit down for 2 weeks.
Dude, yeah.
And when I came out of that, that's when I really had the epiphany of, okay, yeah, you woke up in 2010, but you're still fucking around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it became a message of, God was shaking me, and it was time to really wake the fuck up. And
it takes people a while.
Yeah, and near death. Near death.
Yeah.
That's literally what it took for me to really decide I needed to take the real steps of getting sober, clean, and allowing myself to have a healthy mindset.
Do you feel like in that process, because I know when I started these processes for myself, I lost a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like I lost a lot of like friends. I had rifts with my family. I had when you really start to like look at everything and separate everything out, you're like, wow, I didn't realize like these people contribute to that. These people, are they even going to support me? Are they willing to meet me where I need to be met?
Right.
Because I'm not going to be able to meet you anymore where you need to be met.
Right.
Yeah. What was that for you?
No, there's when you go through sobriety, there's definitely a mourning process of a lot of people in a lot of relationships. And one thing I will say is that when I got down to LA, that was helpful was Nick is completely clean and sober. So that whole atmosphere is very not what you hear about Hollywood and Los Angeles, in the sense that
hell no.
I didn't have those pressures to be in the room and be handed the blunt and be handed a line or a bottle of Crown or whatever.
Where you were before.
Where I was constantly before. And so that was a beautiful part of it, was going to Los Angeles and being able to have that safe space.
That's huge. And a blessing.
Yeah, a huge blessing.
Huge blessing.
And one that I didn't expect, but it allowed me to have that space in Los Angeles to really clear my space mentally and physically.
Was that something you were worried about?
I just don't think it's something I ever gave myself. For 30-something years in radio, it was never, like you said, coming up in the 90s, you don't get told, it's okay to talk about how you're feeling. You don't get told any of that. So in the 90s, it was, you do it or you don't, and you get judged or you don't.
Right.
And you deal with the chips where they fall.
Yeah, it's like we said, like, it's not player.
No.
It is not player at all to be the guy that needs accommodations.
Right.
Like you got to do what the fuck you got to do. But after a while of putting your body through so much of that, because people don't realize that anxiety lives in your body.
Yeah.
So eventually, like you said, I have an aneurysm.
Yep.
Like stress has so much to do with that, on top of substances to cope with these stresses. Like, yeah, we have to look at the evidence that's real.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that you're alive, and I tell you that all the time. Like, I'm so grateful you're here. Like, there's so much more about your life that is such a testimony.
Right.
And I feel, we spoke briefly about purpose, and we'll get more into purpose, but I definitely feel like your life is so purposeful based on, to me, any person that has gone through certain things by generation, right? And this is not me calling you fucking old, bro. This is no, I'm not. No, but you've seen things that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Like I've only heard about, or I've only witnessed from a child's perspective. You've seen things and you've seen things shift.
You've seen a painting on a wall.
Exactly, something that could, like art imitating life from that time that I can only have an interpretation of, but you've really lived it. So you've really lived the experience of like, we don't talk about that shit. And you show up, you do your job, you do it fucking great, you put the ego on and like you wear that. But then like now.
I mean, sitting here right now is a huge deal.
Exactly.
It's a huge part of, for me, it's just not something I'm innately
Is it uncomfortable?
Yeah,
I was going to say, yeah.
It's uncomfortable. But it's very much, like I said, part of what I believe is the purpose of my story.
Right.
If it doesn't serve a purpose, then you're wasting air, literally.
It's true.
I went through a lot of things that were tragic and horrible, and I wouldn't wish it upon people.
Right.
But it only doesn't serve a purpose or have good out of it if I don't use it to help educate or teach or open up doors for people to talk about it.
No, seriously.
Because there's other people going through
seriously.
it. That even now, even that aren't old as hell like I am.
Right.
Who are going through it as well. That you're in these rooms, like we're especially in that's part of the podcast, the Laughing Matters podcast idea for me was, how do we have conversations with people who are in the industry, entertainment, painting, just creatives in general.
Creatives in general, yeah.
We are the type of people who we are putting our hearts and souls on the line in front
Our
of
life
people.
Force.
We're looking for judgment everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere.
And 9 times out of 10, we get the worst response. We get a shutdown. We don't get the gig. We don't get the sale. We don't get X, Y, and Z. And that's something that, what's happening, I think, in social media world is that everybody's broadcasting their wins. They're broadcasting their wins. They're broadcasting everything that's happening.
Right.
It's honky-dory. And that's great. But I think we have to have conversations with artists and creatives, and that's what I'm hoping this podcast will do, where we have conversations with them about the darker times, about sometimes you have moments where, it took you, you're now known for this, but it took you 15 years of blood, sweat, and tears and to get to that point.
And what is the blood, sweat, and tears? Because my whole thing is I can't stand people using the buzzwords of like, yeah, I did the work. What is the work?
Right.
What does that actually look like?
Right.
What did you do?
Right.
Because it's not like, oh, we wrote in a journal and we did some meditation and we cut out substances and that was the work. No, the work is really like, what did you do when you had to sit with yourself and you had to have conversations with yourself? Because that's really what a lot of the work is having really real conversations with yourself. Why was I doing that shit?
Yep.
Who did I hurt along the process? Was I the best person in that situation? No. Am I lovable still?
Yeah.
And that I feel like is the most important question of the whole thing is, am I lovable still?
Yeah.
Because like you said, you went through a lot of things as a child.
Yeah.
You went through a lot of things as a young adult. These are things that you're trying to work through without having, from my understanding, you didn't have your father.
Right.
So you're trying to learn to grow up to be a man, and that's a difficult thing to become in today's society because that involves no emotions.
Right.
I'm having an emotional experience, but I'm not allowed to talk about it because I'm the man of my family now. I got to protect my mom. Or when you become a father, you became a father.
Right.
And I got to be the one that doesn't break.
Right. And professionally, I'm surrounded by the most machismo industry of all, which is the music industry. And
so where do you have the time to ask yourself these really important questions, right? And like, that's why I said, I can't stand hearing people just giving these buzzwords of like, oh, I did the work, or I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in it. No, what's the grit?
Right.
Let's talk about the grit. And that is why I'm excited to be doing this podcast with you, to talk about the grit and like what that actually is. And it's actually not that bad.
Right.
To be able to talk about it.
And the more you talk about it, the more creatives that you talk to, you realize we're all going through it and we're all
that's healing in itself.
dealing with it. And I think in a lot of ways, part of what I found in even growing up before I was aware of this whole scope of my journey, I was always a fan of the underdog.
Right.
I was always rooting for the underdog. And I think that that's something that most people like to do, but we're not exposing the fact that we are underdogs. We're only talking about the win, the polished product, the finished.
Well, and especially with, like you said, social media making that a thing, because literally when we think about the mechanics of it is once I post something, does it get a like?
Right.
How many likes does it get?
Right.
And now, like, we have the insights of like, oh, if I post it this time, they're going to see me. And then are they going to like what I did?
Right.
And then if they don't like it, if it doesn't get the likes or it doesn't get the comments that you want, or if whatever it is, there's so much validation seeking in the creative world now that I feel like creates even more anxiety and more of a problem. And am I relevant in my industry anymore?
Right.
Are people even going to look at me and be like, yeah, I'm somebody?
Right.
Are you still somebody if no one liked your shit? And are you
Right.
still going to create if it didn't fucking hit that time? Like these.
And I think that's part of my journey too as a father, and going through this experience has been, when I lost everything in 2010. None of those, well, I don't want to say none because some people did have my back that were in the industry, but a large majority of the people that were part of my lifestyle at that point bounced and left me, in my puddle. And I don't expect them to pick me up or anything like that. But what I realized is the people that were there were my daughter, my mother, my family, my cousins,
the real ones,
the ones that matter.
Right.
And I had really drifted away from those people in my journey to finding myself in rooms where I'm drinking and smoking to feel normal.
Right.
And so that was part of my journey too. And you come to those realizations, like you said, when you're alone, thinking about your life, how you ended up here, how this got A got to B and B got to C.
Right.
And you really analyze and get honest with yourself about what you've gone through.
Well, and you had this experience, going through your aneurysm in 2020,
right?
Which we were all by ourselves.
Right.
We had nothing but time to fucking think.
Right.
Some people took it left, some people took it right, some people got the PPP, and some people did something different. But you actually had to forcibly sit down and think. And I remember feeling like we've had plenty of conversations, but coming out of the hospital and having conversations with you, I knew I met a different Freeze.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I literally met like a different person. It's like you saw God and like, no, life is different and these changes have to happen. And I'm not going to show up to this event that I'm asked to being shown, I'm asked to being at, or if I am there, I'm not going to spend as much time. Exactly. Like boundaries became like a really big thing. Right. And it was great to see, a lot of the people that were around you supporting and respecting that, but also sad to see that some of those things fell away. Yeah. And like I said, those are things that you have to deal with. Yeah. And sometimes when you have those boundaries, you're like, fuck, I didn't want to lose these relationships because of that. But I think the beautiful part about also being more mature is just realizing like, but they don't matter though. Like these people matter. Right. I don't have to be this version of myself. Yeah. With these people. They just love me regardless of how I show up. Yeah. And I think, when you set boundaries, it does suck when you realize that there's relationships or people that you have to remove yourself from. And it's not because they're always bad or there's judgment, right? But it's literally like, what purpose is this serving? And it really comes down to purpose. The whole discussion of this podcast and future podcasts that we do is really focused on what's the purpose and what's your purpose and how can you use your story, success and wins and losses, right, to show people that it's not all just a straight arrow from point A, the idea, right, to point B. Or polar opposites. Right. Right. And I think that's really the thing that I keep seeing with social media and everything and algorithms and everything else is that we're just perpetuating that A-B story. It's that capitalism, baby. Bottom of the top story. And it's like, we're not telling people the real story of how long this is going to take, how much work's going to be required, how honest you're going to have to be with yourself, and how many times you're going to get pushed to quitting at various points of the road and push through. And that's still player as fuck. Right. Like, right. Like that. I love that. I love being able to talk to people and be like, okay, because a lot of people that I feel like have come to me, or come to my husband, it's a lot of what I feel I'm just met with a lot of egos first. Yeah. And like the beautiful thing about like just my gift is being able to see through all that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I could see through all of that.
Yeah,
I want to know that person.
Right.
That person's cool. And once we get to talking about that person, you know, what that person is going through to keep this up.
Right.
Then it's like, yeah, we're talking about the meat and potatoes, and I bet you feel
That's
better.
why I like having you on the show.
Yeah, man. yeah. Just being able to be, I don't like to say real, but just being yourself.
Right.
Because that's the thing that people love.
Yeah.
Like we're all watching and actively a part of social media. We contribute to it. It's hard not to feel like you're kind of pulled in two different directions of, do I need to exploit myself or do I need to just wear a mask? But we're all craving something genuine.
Yeah.
We're craving real stories. I want to hear about, yes, we love Freeze, but I want to hear about Justin's story. I want to hear about, you know, Justin's wins, Justin's loss. How did Justin get to the point where he needed to have boundaries? And what did the boundaries look like? Were the boundaries put together to first keep people out, or was it to make the relationship more healthier for you? Like, this is what I mean. People hear about these things, but they don't know what that actually looks like.
Yeah. I think also I want to say, you know, I've been resistant to podcasting and all of that
Same.
for so long.
Same.
And part of it is like everybody's already talking. Everybody feels like they have to have a mic. Everybody's, you know, flooding the algorithm with content. And like, I don't want to be one of those people jumping on that bandwagon to make a career. And so when we talked about this idea and the concept came up, it was really like it's in my purpose bag.
No, it is.
You know what I mean? It's
well,
like,
and before the podcast, it was the book.
Right. And all of it is connected to the gifts that God gave me, the path that God gave me, the experience I've had that God gave me, and the fact that it is a disservice to all of those things for me not to put some cameras in this room and have a conversation about my journey through navigating the last 30 years.
Well, and also thinking about like we were talking about exploiting yourself. Feeling like you're exploiting yourself, and then also just dealing with the anxiety of putting yourself out there for people to judge Freeze. Or not just Freeze. You're putting Justin, like Justin Freeze Foster is out here, and laying out all the cards.
Some of my family doesn't know. I haven't had this kind of conversation with some family members who I love dearly, and they love me dearly, but they don't know, you know, the depths of where the rooms I was in or anything like that.
The experiences you had that have really shaped every aspect of it. Yeah.
Right. They just see what I put on social media, and we all put the good stuff.
And we laugh, or we like it, we love it. We build our lives trying to be like other people. But I think I find it to be very cathartic to be doing this in this space, because we both have talked about a podcast, like whether it's me doing my own or you having your own, or just being another voice in the world where everybody's talking. It's like, okay, well, if it's a lot of noise, it's a lot of noise. But for us, we know what we're wanting to create here. We want a space for people to know that when they come here, they can feel safe to just be them.
Yep.
And I
have anxiety and huge issues. Like I'm not.
Baby, I'm red right now.
Right.
I'm red.
We're not comfortable doing this.
No.
You know, it's not for that purpose. It's for the purpose of using the path that we both have through our journeys.
It's the calling, baby.
Yes, the purpose and the calling, and use that as a space to kind of push against what we're seeing.
Well, and something that we talked about just before we even did this was our ability to be able to be in a room and move a room and create those spaces for people to feel comfortable. Like you said, it would be a disservice to having that gift, that thing that was born of this anxiety, this very crippling thing. Like now to be able to use it for good. Right. And I don't want to say for good, but for others in a way that they can just be themselves. Useful. Useful. And I was having a conversation with a really good friend of mine. It was, at first it was a little bit of a debate, and you know how it goes because we be debating, but we were talking about how when you've gone through abuse or neglect or trauma of any kind, and you call yourself a healer, or you call yourself to be a vessel of God's use, I honestly feel like, and this may be a very debatable thing, but I feel like you cannot be that without that. Like you need, I don't say you need the trauma, but you need to have the experience of it, because in real life, when you're dealing with people in real life, if you've never dealt with trauma and you're talking to me about trauma, they see right through it. Yeah. And we've seen enough of that. Like I've really been through the shit. So when you talk to me, you feel the resonance. Right. That is the healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to be able to create that space, alchemize that,
Yeah.
and create purpose from that.
Yeah.
That is what we're all creators, right?
Yeah.
We all are here to create something.
Yeah.
And like the medicine is through that trauma that we've been through, these
Yeah.
experiences that we've had.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's cathartic to be
Yeah.
able to sit here with you like this.
No, I appreciate that, but I definitely agree, because I think at the time in 2010 when I was arrested, it was very public.
Yeah.
I was a public figure. I was on on the radio. I was number one in the market, and then the next thing you know, I'm on the evening news going to jail, and so there was a very public moment there where it's almost like what hurt then is now this far down the road. I'm like, oh, that's exactly where I need to go right back to, is using those experiences to identify with people who go through that.
Yes.
They weren't, they're not famous. They're not,
Right.
they're not known locally or any
Right.
of that, and put myself out there and show them, this isn't just a once in a lifetime or once in a while type thing. We see people, ending their lives due to drug usage.
And especially in the art world, especially in entertainment, the amount of people that have died from overdoses alone.
And we talk about mental health when that happens.
Right. That's the only time we talk about
And then
it.
we go back to our normal day.
And that's that.
And I feel like that's what kind of sparked this thing that made me want to say, look, you've been sitting on this story. People I've been told a million times I should write a book about my story, but we're in the world of podcasts. Like, we can get direct to customer real quick.
Right.
And we need to have these discussions, the yin to the yang of, the glitz and the glamour and the polished product out there.
Right.
And have conversations that are honest and real with people who, oh, they got it all. I've got people who are writers at Wild 'N Out, and stand-up comedians, and musicians, and I've got all these people that I know and that are friends that have, here and there on their social media talk about the fact that they're seeing a counselor or a therapist, or they talk about their mental health issues, or
Which is beautiful.
and it's beautiful, but we need to get them all into a place and kind of curate a spot to have those discussions. Where it's not all about God, and it's not all about sobriety.
Right.
It's not all that. There's a safe space for everybody to have a conversation.
Right. And I feel like the most important part too, because we were talking about this, like the whole point of just bringing humor to it is like, one, that's the only way you're ever really going to get into it.
Right.
My husband, we used to watch like scary movies. Well, we don't really do it anymore, but anytime we would watch
I
something
don't
that's like,
understand having choosing to be scared. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
but I
to me.
like it. I like it, but I don't like it. But like watching things like that, like we were just talking about the Blair Witch Project, how that shit's like hella scary. If we were to sit down and watch it, we would watch it, but then my husband would instantly want to put on a comedy right after.
Right, exactly.
Like, can we even the playing field out?
Of what you just watched.
No, literally. And literally, we're cleansing the fuck
right.
out of this room right now.
Right.
But that's what humor is. Humor truly is cleansing, being able just to laugh at it. Like,
Yeah.
I've had the experience of just like, going through my own journey and realizing like me delivering hard messages to the people that I love, I do it in jest. And not in a way that's like, I'm laughing at you, but like, it is funny. When we're sitting back, if you take a step back and you just look at your life and you're like, you responded like that? You're fucking dumb. Like, why the fuck did you do that?
I'm very ridiculous a lot of the time.
Absolutely. But that, you feel better about it.
Right.
If you can laugh at yourself, that, a lot of people have always told me like, oh, you're really confident. You're, that's kind of intimidating. You're really like good at just being able to like show up completely as all of yourself. And it's like what started out as a really shitty coping mechanism
Right.
actually became something that was amazing.
Right.
Because now when you're around me, you have to show up. And you can show up. And it's okay. And we're going to laugh at it. I'm going to call you a fucking weirdo for fucking doing that. I would hope that you would call me a weirdo or like let me know what I've done.
Right.
Like I'm not
the ironic thing of
yes,
what you just said.
like just fucking laugh.
Right.
Laugh. It's funny. We're having an experience. A lot of it is serious. A lot of it is hard. But like you get past it and you realize like, damn, I got through that.
It doesn't have to be polarizing.
No,
The discussion
it doesn't.
about it doesn't have to be polarizing. It doesn't have to come with judgment. It
No.
can really be a thing that you joke about and you laugh about because we're crazy.
Yeah.
And everybody's crazy.
No,
in their
legit.
own special way. Everybody's got their little way of dealing things that's ironic to how they feel politically, or there's yins to yangs, and you're saying the wrong thing. You're saying one thing, but your actions are speaking a completely different way.
Right.
And
that's a big teller.
And the humor there.
Yeah.
There's humor there, and having those discussions and pointing that out is important.
Well, and you've always been my favorite. Like I would tell Josh all the time, especially when we would like get into it, I'll be like, Freeze, I swear to God, he just, my God, no, he is not an asshole, but like he just hit me with like a perspective, and I'm like, yeah, I got to sit back and I got to like really think about that perspective. But the way that you would do it is in such a way that I admire, because that's a way that I like it. Like, can we just point out the fact that you're completely 86ing a whole group of people when you're fucking talking? Right. And I'm like, fuck.
Right.
I am.
Right.
I do have to consider that, you know, like,
right.
and
we all do it.
We all do it. And it's okay. Do you still love me afterwards? Yeah.
Right.
Do I still love that person afterwards? Yeah.
And do we have progressive conversation? Yeah.
Progressive. Yeah. And, the most important word is what is the destination of the progression anyway?
Yeah.
The whole point of all of it.
Yeah.
Is to have lasting relationships, to feel comfortable in community, and ultimately rely on your community for healing.
Yeah.
Like.
And I think that's the hope with the podcast is that we can use the purpose of, we've talked about my story in this, just kind of introduce myself to people.
Well, wait a minute.
What?
For good reason, though, because we're celebrating a very important date.
Yeah. What was it, a soberversary?
Oh, we were talking about what we're going to call it. I thought a sobriety anniversary is really cool, but that might be too much for the mouth.
Yeah, I don't know. My journey with sobriety, making that decision 4 years ago, was kind of like let me see how long I can do it.
Yeah.
And
which I've heard.
Yeah.
That's kind of the process, is like you're not, like, talk about a bit more of the process of that. Of like every day you're waking up and you got this thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me personally, my journey, my trigger for getting high, getting stoned, drinking, any of those things was always, I identified it. I identified like, why am I not smoking when I'm at home? Why am I not drinking when I'm at home? Why am I not doing anything other than typical around the house things when I'm home?
Right.
Why is this always a precursor to me going out and hosting a nightclub?
See, this is where anxiety is used for good.
Right. And why is this? Yeah, exactly. I start micromanaging everything.
100%.
And
yeah.
Why am I only using when I'm going to host this concert? Why am I? It's always a social thing. And then I wake up the next morning and I don't want to do it anymore. I don't have an urge, but I went stupid and drank 2 bottles of Jameson last night with my friends.
And for what? Yeah.
What makes me do that? And analyzing it and figuring it out that, that's because I don't feel comfortable without it.
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable in those rooms or in those spaces or on that stage with that mic.
Right.
Without having, the typical taking the edge off.
Yeah.
And so, that whole process of identifying that was part of what I went through in 2010. But 2020, when the health scare happened, it was like, oh, you almost killed yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you almost
real as shit.
You almost ended it, and not intentionally. Like, you literally might not have been here.
Right.
And having the thought process of all right, let's do this the way that your body needs it to be done.
Is it an intuitive process for you, or do you have like a program? Is there a regimen? Is there a therapist?
Yeah, no. See, I did do AA when I first started. I went into AA, and I did that for about a year. I would go to a meeting every week or two. Mm-hmm. And I thought that helped because it put me in a room full of other people who could identify and whatnot. When I moved to Los Angeles, I didn't find a new meeting or whatever. But again, my situation is very different than, I have relatives who are alcoholics,
right.
And I see what that is. And there's a lot less control,
right.
that I see that's able to be pulled in those situations because there's a chemical issue going on.
And that's also a very real thing, is that it's a chemical dependence.
Yes, and it's much different than the abuse I was doing. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to know that and not speak to people as if my solution is anybody else's solution.
Yes.
But the discussion about that is important to have because, it's a very humbling place to admit, like, I can't do this. Like
Yeah.
I can't do this like everybody else does. I need to not do it.
Dude, I have my reasons. Like, my reasons has everything to do with my sinuses.
Right.
It has fucking nothing to do with being, you know, an
Out of
alcoholic.
control, right.
But understanding that I had my reasons for drinking for the same that I feel like alcoholics do. Socially, I got nerves. Let me calm them down a little bit. I know that the alcohol helps.
Take the edge off.
Eventually, like my body does this thing where we just don't get dependent on anything. Except for humans.
Yeah.
We get like dependent. We don't get dependent on substances in here. And yeah, my reason was just my sinuses. Whereas someone else's reason, like you said, is something totally different.
Yeah. For me, it was my health. You know, not wanting to die.
Right.
But literally, it's a health issue. But other people don't have that same wake up or that same barrier in the way. It's more like losing your house or losing your car or losing your job are the things that some addicts or alcoholics have to deal with that make them wake up to what the situation
That
is.
also makes me feel super sad, like, as you say it, because it's like, why can't we address this as it's happening?
Right.
Like, why does it have to take you losing something in order for you to wake up? And that's the only part of the process I don't like. And I think the anxiety in us all, healers, are just like, we see the train going and it's not stopping. We want to prevent that.
Yeah.
Which I think also just with this podcast in general, we want to be able to prevent that
Right.
before it even spirals into something where you have to lose out on things. You have to lose a life. There's plenty of, and I know many people that I'm close to that, you know, hit and run situations.
Right.
You were drunk and you have to live with that now.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that had to wake you up. Why does it, I don't want it to be a tragedy for you. And
Yeah.
you shouldn't need the tragedy and be chasing the tragedy. And I'd want better for people in general. You know, let's create a space where you can talk about it.
Yeah.
And like
'Cause
just,
even in my situation, when I step back and look at my whole life, I think about those stories because I have friends who have 5 DUIs,
Right.
or they've lost, you know, they're locked up for a long period of time, or
Right.
they've lost everything, and I look at my life and I'm like, that easily could have been me.
yeah,
That easily could. God had His hand on me because
sure did.
it definitely could have been me at different points in my life, and at that point, you know, who knows how the story writes,
Right.
You know, but yeah.
That's, I'm telling you, the meat and potatoes of it all
Yeah.
is just being able to make the space to talk about it. And I'm really grateful that you did decide to come and tell this story. We could have started the podcast any other way, but I feel like what better way to get it started than to talk about literally your experience
Yeah.
with it, because I don't meet many people, you know, your age, again,
Don't age shame me.
I'm not age, but I don't meet many people your age that are thinking like you.
Right.
And honestly, it's people your age and up that are having a really hard time embracing mental health.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a definite judgment. You know, there's a fear and a judgment that you have to get past in order to do it.
Right.
And especially like we talked about at the beginning, like growing up in the '90s and those spaces, it was definitely, you know, Wu-Tang and NWA. It wasn't
Period.
talking about any of this kind of stuff. And
And even before that, we're talking about, you know, the 70s, 60s, 50s, where things people are recovering from wars. You know, there's civil rights things happening. There's a lot of tension in the environment that contributes
Culturally,
so
everything.
much to this issue, on top of capitalism.
Right.
Something briefly spoken on, like just all of these contributing factors that crash down on a person every day. And then now, even in our interpersonal relationships, we can't have these conversations. And it's like you're squeezing a person to the point of snap.
yeah,
And whether it's creating a crisis or the Menendez brothers situation where they had to kill their parents
Right.
because they didn't have coping. Like, you weren't being
Nobody
rich,
talks
living
about
in
any of that.
Hollywood. You're
Yep.
not allowed to talk about that. And if you did, you get in trouble. Like,
Yeah.
there's real consequences to being able to talk about these things. I get really happy to hear people like you that have the tenure that you do, the platform that you do. You know, you're in this industry, so you're amongst these people and you understand the things that prevent them from talking about things. It is such a brave thing that you're doing to be able to open this up, because now what's going to happen when you leave? You about to go home.
Right.
You about to live your life.
right.
Does this threaten you in any way
Right.
to be able to talk about it?
No.
If anything, it's just like, yeah, I got that off, and like,
Yeah.
we can go now.
And it's going to help others, and that's my main hope, is that as we continue going and we get different creatives and we get different people from different, producers, talent, painters, every
People that work in
aspect.
HR.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah, people who are in the creative space, because creatives are the ones that are dealing with it the most, because we live in these spaces where you can abuse drugs and cope with your mental illness in a zillion different healthy or unhealthy ways. And
We're seeing a lot of the unhealthy coming to a head. People
Yeah.
getting into a lot of trouble based on not having it right up here, and
Right.
there being no limits because it's such a praised thing in the entertainment and creative culture. The struggling artist. Okay, well, in order for me to fit the struggling artist narrative, I need to be on something.
Right.
I have to look a certain way. I have to act a certain way. I have to compromise so much of myself. Like, being a creative entrepreneur for myself was difficult because there was a lot of things that I didn't participate in that a lot of people felt like I should, but it didn't really feel right. The only thing that really felt like right to me.
Props to you for having that boundary and respecting it.
It was hard. It was hard, but I think in general, doing the work within the process of it, like using my work to refine myself rather than, using my work for something else, using my work for everyone else's adoration and validation, but more, this is really my work that I'm doing for me.
Yeah.
And like, I've had people ask me like, why are you not bigger? Why are you not, like, you're supposed to be internationally famous by now. And it's like, I don't want that.
That's
and
why I asked you
never
to do this podcast.
I know, I fucking know. And I literally was like, I don't know if I'm like ready to do that. I don't know if I'm ready to just be like out there like that. But I know that this is work that it's not about me. I keep getting pushed into the work, and it's like God saying like, but I need you though.
Right.
And others need you to be in this space. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here with you talking about this. Like, I've wanted to tell you this in person too, just growing up, hearing your voice for years.
Yeah.
And being like, man, like I'm thinking radio is like, because back then radio was everything.
It was fun. It was.
And like I always admired like just the free's voice, just someone who just knows how to talk and knows how to, like, you're having conversations, you're putting on a show via the radio, and like I've always admired that and looked up to that.
Thank you.
And and like one day aspired to that, because I've always been like a personality, and to now be sitting here with you talking about the things that are very real to me. The only things that I would want to ever open my mouth to speak about, I get to do that with you, who has been in this world. And
it's an honor to do it with you, because honestly, like I said, we started this whole process through DMs about conversations about things that we're posting randomly, separately.
Vaccines, Trump, childhood abandonment, relationships and avoidance problems, and all of it. Yeah.
And those conversations, and I've always watched what you've done, and you had for a period of time your account was private, so I couldn't share what you were posting.
Yeah.
And there's all I'm watching, and I'm like, you don't need to do anything, but I see in you someone who can speak to many people who would benefit from having you speak your truth and speak your experience.
That. Thank you.
And that's why I'm doing this right now. I mean, to be honest with you, we wouldn't do any of this if I wasn't comfortable with you.
No,
and
period.
I wasn't feeling like you were somebody who had that skill to bring that out of people. Yeah. And so,
thank you for that.
No, I'm excited about it, and I look forward to hopefully having more creatives from your space, my space. I know that I have blind spots as a white privileged male that you can help me be.
I'm not gonna lie, you got it down though, because even for me, you be like, and don't forget. I'll be like, yeah, you're a real one for that.
But I do, especially I think as I get older, my daughter has made me aware of a lot of them.
Right.
I have conversations and I say something, and my daughter's like, oh my God, you're so, blah blah blah. And sorry, she's more woke than I am, But,
right. Yeah.
But I think that is I'm grateful that you're part of this. You know what I mean? And I'm grateful that we're doing this together.
Hell yeah.
And I look forward to you bringing creatives that you're familiar with that are willing to come on. And I have friends, and we continue to do this. And I thank everybody who's made it this far.
Hell yeah.
I have a tendency to ramble, but the more that we have
a tendency to ramble.
We get more guests on with us. I think that's you know, the goal is to have conversations that are free flowing and to have conversations that are honest and funny and sarcastic and all those things. And that's really the goal of this for me, is to have multiple cultures, sexualities. I don't know what the letters are.
All the other one. All of it.
LGB.
TQIA.
All those. You know,
everyone.
Have conversations with everybody about the same mental illness, mental health, drug abuse, whatever the
intersectionalities, all of it.
All of it, it all kind of crossbreeds with it.
We're all experiencing all of this shit. So it is, we're all literally, we're all in it together. Right. And that's the whole point. And we all have different views and things that we can learn from. So that definitely is the whole point of Laughing Matters, bringing your brain into this, bringing mine, being able to integrate all of these things, and people just having a safe space to be able to say what they need to say, if they need to say it, or if they just want to.
I appreciate you sitting with me for the first episode.
Dude, hell yeah. I can't wait for more. We're going to have a fucking blast. So pumped.
Follow us on social media, Laughing Matters Pod, at Laughing Matters Pod. And you can follow me at iFollowFreeze. I don't know if she's going to give her a personal account.
Oh my God, stop. It'll be Emo Godry, at Emo Godry. You can follow me there. It is a personal account, though. Don't expect nothing from me. Don't expect shit. I ain't keeping nothing PC, period.
Thanks for listening and watching. We appreciate you.
Bye.